Entrepreneurship is different. And when we choose that path for ourselves, we're also choosing it for our children. And we have to be hyper aware of that they are going to need different levels of support and guidance and opportunities.
Hey, my name is Jenna Kutcher, and I am obsessed with all things business, marketing, numbers, and helping you to navigate both the messy and the magical seasons of this thing called life. I'm a small town mama who took a $300 camera, grew a successful photo biz, and now I work from home and run a 7-figure online business. I teach you the tried and true secrets to building a career you adore. Shy away from the real talk? No way. Money, hardship, growth, loss, and marketing are all topics we discuss here. Think of this as your one-stop shop for happy hour with a gal pal mixed with business school. Pull up a seat, make sure you're cozy, and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. This is the Goal Digger Podcast. I am quickly approaching this next phase of my life where I'll become a mom of 2. And though I've nearly had 3 years to figure out what it means to be both a CEO and a mother, I'm still feeling a lot of the similar jitters about how my time and energy will shift once baby number 2 arrives. You know that I'm a firm believer that I can and you can be both a present mom and a great leader, but that doesn't come without learning curves and a lot of self-work. And it requires a lot of grace. Elizabeth Hartke is a business and leadership strategist and the founder of the Luminary Leadership Co. And she's passionate about raising up our current level of leadership to create generational change and wealth and to allow us to leave behind a powerful legacy. She's here to explore all the ways you can expand your capacity to be a present parent and an effective leader in business while breaking free of how society says you should raise your business and babies to develop a specific strategy that works for you. Let's dig into all things motherhood and CEO life today with Elizabeth Hartke. Here we go. Have you ever wished you had an on-demand mentor that could provide advice on how to improve your customer experience or scale your business? Well, HubSpot's got you covered. Introducing the HubSpot Podcast Network, it's a one-stop audio destination for business professionals looking for education and inspiration on how to grow better. With access to a collection of marketing, sales, service, and operations shows, you'll have all the information you need as your company goes from startup to scale up and beyond. Listen, learn, and grow with the HubSpot Podcast Network at HubSpot.com/podcast network. Thanks to Issue for supporting Goal Digger. Create once and distribute everywhere. Everything is optimized to post on your website and social platforms. Get started with Issue today for free or sign up for a premium account and get 50% off at issuu.com/podcast and use the promo code GoalDigger. All right, Elizabeth, I am so excited for this conversation today. It's one that I've been dying to have, especially at this stage of my life, getting ready to welcome number 2. So first and foremost, just welcome to the Goal Digger Podcast.
I am thrilled to be here with you, especially as you gear up for baby number 2. I agree. I think this is the perfect conversation to be having.
Yes. Okay. So walk me through, I've told everyone about your titles and founder and all of these things, but tell me the beginning. Where does your story begin?
Yes. So I grew up in entrepreneurship. That was just what was familiar to me. So as a kid, both of my parents ran their own businesses. My mom still runs her business to this day. My dad just retired in his early 70s. My grandparents, entrepreneurs, my aunts and uncles. So it was just really the norm. And I think growing up in that, I took for granted that how our personal values and just the way we lived our lives, it was also how my family members ran their businesses. It was just this beautiful juxtaposition of seeing those two parallel to each other, but they really worked in harmony. And my mom, I just have so many memories of my mom being at everything. And we're going to talk a lot about this today, but man, looking back, I even recently interviewed her for my podcast and I asked her, did you have a twin I didn't know about? You never missed a ball game. You cooked every meal. You were at the table with us. You put us to bed. You were there to get us up in the morning. You were bringing popsicles on the hot days at school. What gives? You were also the provider for our family. And what I didn't put together until years later was that although my mom was present for everything and just rock star mom, it came at a sacrifice because I still have memories of being in like my oversized t-shirt, sleeping, when I was like 4 years old, waddling out to the bathroom to go get a drink at, midnight and seeing the dining room light on and my mom out there with all her papers strewn all over the dining room table, catching up on the work she had missed because she had prioritized her family so much. And for her, that was okay. Like that was exactly what she wanted. But there was a piece of me as I started to step into entrepreneurship about a decade ago when I sat in corporate for about 5 minutes before I felt like I was suffocating and knew I had to do something on my own, was thinking, okay, how can I have the freedom of flexibility that my mother had, but how can I transition that into time freedom, like where it's not just time flexibility, it's time freedom, where I don't have to make up for that lost time. I can prioritize my family, but I can also run my business in a way that allows me to be present. So my business has evolved, a ton, like it should, over the last decade. In the beginning, it was trading time for money and consulting and marketing and doing all those kind of things. And then I was serving early stage business owners. And then as I grew, I started to serve more scaled business owners and then people who wanted to grow and scale to their next level. And now I'm working with a lot of my peers, which is a fun new area to be in. But there was a piece that was missing in the last probably 5 years where I was helping these business owners and these entrepreneurs scale, but they would all hit this cap because I realized that they were missing the leadership element. If they didn't scale themselves at the same time they were scaling their businesses, they would tap out on their potential. So that was the birth of the Luminary Leadership Company that focuses on really elevating these successful entrepreneurs into their next level of powerful leadership so that they can do work that really matters without it being at the expense of things that matter most. And with a heavy focus on raising up this generation of leadership, meaning us, you and I, and our peers, but also so that we can embody leadership in a way that allows us to raise up that next generation of leadership too, and our kids and the people that we get to impact.
Oh, I think it's so beautiful. And I think it's so interesting too. I think a lot of people that have entrepreneurial parents either run towards it or run away from it.
Totally.
Like it's like one or the other. No one in my family was an entrepreneur. And so it's always fascinating to see which direction that goes. And I'm sure that also makes you pause a lot more too of like, what are my children seeing in terms of running a business and possibility? And I think, knowing that we have these little eyes on us all the time and that we are the ones that paint that picture for them is a privilege. And it's also something that can become a challenge as well.
Yep. A beautiful challenge. I agree.
Yes. Okay, so a recent stat shows that there are 1.4 million fewer mothers in the workforce right now than pre-pandemic for one reason or another. So let's talk about this. Like, as mothers who are pursuing entrepreneurial endeavors, what seems to be the very first hurdle in balancing and trying to figure out how to do both things, both mom life and CEO life?
Yeah, I think I've heard you talk about this before, Jenna. So it's nothing revolutionary, but it's true. It's this pressure of balance. That's a tall order and it's not really accessible to us. There are seasons in life. And for us as a family, something that we've developed, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, is just having our true north. Like, what is guiding us? Yep. And we have just these set of standards and values that we live by as a family, so that it's not so much about trying to strike this perfect balance. And instead, which feels so unrealistic, but instead it's about honoring our priorities and our values as we go along the journey. Because I think as ambitious entrepreneurs, we set our sights on the destination, but like 99.999 and so on % of life is the journey. It's the process of getting to that destination. So if we're constantly feeling like, oh, I have to be in perfect balance, or I have to have the same amount of hours between this and this, or whatever the lie we tell ourselves might be, then we constantly feel out of alignment. We constantly feel behind. We're comparing ourselves to what everybody else is doing, even though we're not really seeing their behind the scenes. And we're not realizing that this whole process is so interconnected and intertwined. The example that comes to my head is over the past 5 years or so, our family has shifted from not completely, but from focusing more on the traditional Western medicine. So like the wellness checks and a doctor for your ovaries and a doctor for your skin and a doctor for your back, kind of pretending like each part of the body is separate from the rest. Oh, you're having stomach issues, take this pill, you have a skin condition, apply this steroid. Instead of saying you're having stomach issues and skin issues, let's look at how one is affecting the other and treat the whole person. What are you eating? What are you exposed to? What are your stressors? How do you feel? And let's get to the root cause. So we've been seeking out more doctors who do that. And a lot of times that's Eastern medicine or naturopathic or functional, integrative, whatever it might be. I feel like that is a really good, model for life itself when we talk about this balance problem and what women are really struggling with as moms, because we treat it oftentimes like we have our business over here in this bubble and our kids over here in this bubble and our spouse over here in this bubble, and we got to even them out. But when you're stressed at work, it affects your relationships. When your marriage is in a vice and struggling, it's affecting how you feel in your work or your creativity. Our lives are all intertwined. And we have chosen as entrepreneurial parents a different path than those who don't choose that path. It's not better, not worse. God bless stay-at-home parents who are full-time I think you guys are the real goats. Like, I envy your ability to do that. Or the moms that go off to a 9-to-5, commute home, somehow get dinner on the table, and then get their kids to bed and do it again the next day. So this true north concept to me is instead having this code of ethics that we live by as a family, that we worked on together as a family, so that decisions feel easier. And it's not about seeking balance. It's about everything we encounter along the way. We put it up against this set of values, and it makes every decision so much easier. An opportunity comes our way in business, we can pin it up against our values and say, hey, does this honor our priorities? Is this in alignment with our true north, or is it not? And if it's not, it's an easy no. And if it does, then we can have a discussion as to whether it fits in our schedule. So letting go of that balance myth is the first piece of, I feel like, jumping over that initial hurdle.
Yeah, I agree so much with all of that. And I think too, there are different seasons in your life where you'll value different things. I know a lot of times when you're starting your business, you value money over time. That's why so many of us start in the business of trading time for money, right? It's like we're so stoked to be getting paid to do something that we're passionate about. It feels surreal. And then I think a lot of entrepreneurs hit a season where time suddenly becomes more valuable and we're willing to exchange money to get our time back. And I know for me, when I became a mother, time truly became my currency. It was the number one thing that I would hold things up to and say, if I'm going to be spending my time on this, is it yielding a result that makes me proud? Is it something that is worthy of that time? And I think it's beautiful for people to just get really honest about where they're at, because let's be honest, this last year rocked a lot of people financially. And maybe you are in a season where you do have to invest your time to get back money. But I love that you kind of have that true north. And I know for me, I had to ditch the word balance and replace it with presence. And if I can just commit to being present wherever I'm choosing to be, whether it's in the business or as a mom, I think that's the best thing that I can do. And I think it's the way that at the end of the day, when my head hits the pillow, I don't feel guilt, because I think mom guilt is everywhere,
Yeah, it's plaguing us for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because when I think about entrepreneurship, and especially the way that it's presented on social media, it's presented as this thing of freedom, right? Like, we start our businesses to gain back time with our families or to live this life of freedom. And yet a lot of times the things that we imagined are the things that suffer because of our business. We often become enslaved to our businesses, and we often find ourselves where our business is running our life and it's not supporting the life that we wanted. And so where does the process of reconfiguring your strategy for being a present mom and an effective business owner begin? Like, how do you even start to dismantle? How does one support the other? And how do they both coexist and not be compartmentalized?
Yes, you are speaking my language with this one, because you're so right. So many of us get that, I don't know, that little spark of inspiration in the early stages, when we're first getting into business, because we have this vision for the future. I mean, for my husband and I, we had a vision for the freedom we wanted to create before we even had kids. You know, you're picturing it, you're tasting it. You're like, man, I'm going to get this business to this place where I have all this time to be present, and I'm going to homeschool, and I'm going to have a garden. And then clearly I didn't have kids yet because I don't know how that actually worked. But then life happens and we build this business. I'd say it's part strategy and it's part leadership. That's a big part of why we, made this movement with Luminary Leadership Company, is because it is a part strategy issue, right? So there are people building businesses that the business model itself is going to keep them working in order to make money. It's that simple. So that's the trading time for money model. It's consulting. And even if you have a high billable hour, you still have to show up in order to get paid. So you can be a lawyer making, buco bucks every time you meet with a client, but you're not making that money unless you meet with the client. And the same goes across all, different industries, or if you have a brick and mortar, whatever it might be. But more than anything, at least what I've seen, and maybe you've seen this too in working with people, is it's really this leadership gap. We operate in this reactionary mode. We run feast or famine businesses where it's all built on the next launch or the next thing. And we just are constantly grinding and feeling stressed. And we wanted to create this home for entrepreneurs to elevate into that next level of leadership so that they don't have to do what they love and what they're called to do at the sacrifice of what actually matters most. So I think sometimes entrepreneurs just have bad math. I've heard so many people have this mindset around, okay, hard work plus time will eventually equal freedom. My mom is evidence of that. She's in her mid 60s. She is an absolute wonder in her business, but she has to still be showing up physically for her business in order to be earning. And she's worked harder than anybody I know. And it hasn't shifted the pendulum towards freedom for her. So saying it's strategy alone is also a discredit to the person steering the ship. So after a decade of working with these different entrepreneurs and how to grow and scale, I started to notice this pattern. And it's why we're shifting to this focus of entrepreneurial leadership, because I think it bridges that gap between strategy and that freedom and the ability to step into the life people really want to be living by being strategic, but also by elevating themselves and honoring those priorities and knowing where they're being called next and not getting distracted by the bajillion things that come our way as entrepreneurs, whether it be opportunities or the next algorithm or the next system or whatever it might be, and staying focused on that purpose that's inside of us. And then we develop the business model that allows that purpose to come to life without it requiring us to be sitting at our desk or in front of a client or working with somebody personally every step of that journey.
I think that's so powerful. And I know, in our experience, I was just actually messaging a friend yesterday who has been through a miscarriage, and it's just such a devastating loss. And I told her, I said, it's wild looking back, because when we were pregnant the first time, I was a wedding photographer. I traded time for money. If I didn't show up, I didn't get paid. And while our journey took longer than we anticipated, being 3 years before we actually had our baby, I was thinking about her last night. We were reading a book, and she was sitting on my lap, and I said something about like, oh, you're my angel baby. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, there was so much work that I did while I was in that season of waiting, where I continually asked myself, what do I want this to look like when I have kids? What would motherhood really look like if I threw a baby into the mix right now? How do I start to shift? How do I change the sails and the direction this ship is going? And it's not overnight. And I think a lot of times people don't pause long enough to ask those questions. They don't get quiet enough with themselves to really be honest about that. And so it's like you're throwing a baby to a person that's already drowning and saying, good luck, right?
Yep.
It's like, a lot of women find themselves in that place of like, this wasn't what I envisioned as an entrepreneur. And this also wasn't what I envisioned as a mother. What would you say to someone that's feeling that way? Because I think honestly, it's wildly easy to feel that way in either realm.
Oh, there is no doubt. I can't think of a mom that I've encountered in the entrepreneurial space that hasn't felt that in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I have to come back to some questions that ground me. And first and
Yeah.
foremost, at least for me, it's knowing that I'm being guided. Like, I cannot put the pressure on myself of trying to convince myself that I'm in control of every little thing, because one, it's not true. And two, it would suffocate me. It would make me feel just like I'm constantly failing and falling behind and struggling. Whereas when you have this energy of truly believing you're being guided, that, you know, God's plan for you is bigger than your plan for you, or whatever your belief might be, then all of a sudden you release some of that pressure and you can actually see the path ahead of you instead of everything feeling so like your walls are closing in. But some of the wisdom that I gained from people that I've talked to along the way, one of those people was my husband's grandmother. And she worked as a therapist into her 80s, a family counselor. And I remember just feeling a lot of that pressure and that guilt and feeling like, man, you know, am I failing in motherhood? Am I failing in business? Am I failing in both? And she really gave me that piece of knowing that our kids do not see us through the same lens that we see ourselves. So we see ourselves through this lens of, you know, needing to be perfect in some capacity or at this standard that we have for ourselves. And our kids see us through such a forgiving, grace-filled lens. And Michael's grandmother, had 10 children. So I was like, how did you do it? And then she ultimately went back to school and then worked. So she, you know, really experienced this world of her career that she loved, and then having 10 children at home. And I was asking her, how did you do it all? And how did you not feel like, you know, you were slighting your kids? Like, you had that many kids. I've got 3, and I feel like I'm split in multiple directions, and still there's not enough of me to go around. And she was saying, that's because you're assuming that your kids are placing that same expectation that you have for yourself. For me, it was, you know, a Saturday morning taking 1 or 2 of the kids to go grocery shopping with me. They felt like they were the center of my world, when for me, it was something I had to do anyway, but I included, you know, a couple at a time in the process. Or when I was working and I had to read into the late hours of the night of a book that I was going to be, you know, taking a test on in my schooling or in my career, I would sit down with the kids and I would discuss the pieces of the book that would apply to them, or that they would feel like they could resonate with, and I spoke in kid language. So just that, it was almost like permission to keep going forward with where I was being called outside of motherhood, but just to bring my kids along for that ride and understand that there isn't some perfect standard that I have to live up to. I have to, you know, for me, my priorities require me to honor those kids ahead of my business and honor their well-being and being well-adjusted kids and growing into their next level. But it doesn't have to mean that I'm like totally disconnecting myself from business in order to do that, or having to have these perfect days where the kids feel like they're the center of my world for 24 straight hours. Maybe it's 2 straight hours where they have all of me, or I'm bringing them into the mix. My 4-year-old is obsessed with filing for me. I don't even have anything to file. Everything's digital, but I just give her like old bills and papers and stuff. And she's sitting next to me while I'm working, and she's a part of mom's world. And I have memories like that with my mother too. And I think, you know, just taking that pressure off of ourselves is so freeing in the process of stepping into our next level, both as parents and in our next level of entrepreneurship as well.
Do you use a customer relationship management platform in your business? A CRM for short? Not quite sure what that is or why you need one? Well, I've got you covered. A CRM platform like HubSpot helps you align and manage customer interactions with your business so you can deliver consistently great customer journeys that drive growth and lifetime loyalty. With HubSpot as your CRM, you can install live chat on your website so you can get in touch with potential new clients and customers directly. You can allow these potential new clients to book meetings with you, which would be great if you're a coach or a podcaster. And HubSpot also enables you to access the full history of each customer's experience with your business so that you can have more informed conversations with potential clients and current customers and build personalized content. One of my biggest predictions for new marketing trends is definitely more personalized content and messaging. So knowing the full timeline of each customer's relationship with your business will be key to serving them the right content, offers, and messaging at the right time. Learn more about how you can scale your company without scaling complexity at HubSpot.com. You made an incredible piece of content, and now it's time to post it to your website, share it to Instagram, and send it to your email list. But if posting your creation everywhere includes reformatting, resizing, re-downloading, and re-uploading, well, you need Issue. Issue is the all-in-one platform to create and distribute beautiful digital content from marketing materials to magazines to flipbooks and brochures and more. Make it once and distribute it everywhere without reformatting. Your content is already optimized for engagement and it's ready to share. And Issue works seamlessly with tools you already use like Canva, Dropbox, and InDesign so that you can convert static PDFs into Instagram stories, embeddable flipbooks, and other forms of digital content. Get started with Issue today for free, or if you sign up for a premium account, you'll get 50% off when you go to issue.com/podcast and use the promo code GoalDigger. That's ISSUU.com/podcast and use promo code GoalDigger at checkout for your free account or 50% off your premium account. That's issue.com/podcast with the promo code GoalDigger. Oh, that's an incredible story. And I think a lot of the pressure comes on that we're trying to work like we're not parents and trying to parent like we don't work.
Yes,
and it's
right.
like it doesn't work that way. And even this morning we woke up a little bit late and we were making smoothies, all of us together, and I just love that time together. And then finally I was like, all right, mommy's got to get to work. And then Coco kind of looked at me like, mommy work, pewter? And I was like, yep, today I'm doing the podcast. And like trying to have her at least have as much of an understanding as a 2-year-old can that work is not a bad thing and that I'm excited to work. But as soon as work is done, then I'm excited to be with her. And I think, it's really valuable for our children to see us working and to understand what goes into it. And that's how we learned work ethic in the first place. And I think a lot of times these days, it's like, she comes down the stairs and I want to shut my computer and put my phone away and be fully present with her. But I think sometimes presence can come in the form of showing them what it is that we're doing to add value to their worlds. And it's just, this constant challenge of like, where am I most needed right now? It's like triage, but in a beautiful way, because both options are wonderful.
And do you find too, one thing that I feel, Jenna, that I feel like it's just kind of clicking. Sometimes I'm late to the party. I'm like, how did I not notice this before? But we talk about this idea of being present too. This can be a trap almost like balance can, because there is a difference between being present and feeling present. When you have like a launch coming up or something where it's really hard to escape all the things, no matter how awesome your team is and how well oiled your machine is, you've got something coming down the pike that's a pretty big deal, and there's pressure on that, and it's weighing on you and it's on your mind. So there are times where I've blocked off my calendar to be totally present. No phones, no devices, nothing but time with the kids. But on that walk in the woods as we're, discovering bugs that I don't want to be touching, but my kids are like putting in my pockets and in my hands. I noticed that my mind is wandering a little bit to some of that other stuff that's on my plate, even if I don't need to be doing it in that moment. So it's really practicing feeling present and honoring that presence and not just physically being present, because sometimes that too is a little bit of a trap that makes us, at least for me, it made me feel like a failure for a while, because I was like, what am I broken? I'm physically present. I don't have I don't have any social media on my phones, email on my phone. Like I've cleared all that stuff off of my regular personal phone, and I'm still not feeling fully present. So I started to beat myself up about that. I'm like, man, we can find something to beat ourselves up about no matter what we're doing. I'm doing it right. And I'm still like, kicking myself. So I think it's just being aware of that difference. And when you do feel those thoughts creep in, knowing that, okay, that's normal. I run a big business. I do a lot of different things, but what can I do in this moment to ground me so that I actually feel present and let go of that for this moment in time, so that I really can create a memory in a moment versus just a block on my schedule that says Liz is present with the kids for these couple of hours.
Yes. And it's so funny too, because I think, dealing with a toddler who's feeling a lot and changing a lot and going through a lot, it's funny because I'm like, all she wants is just my attention. And it would feel better for me to be fully present for 20 minutes than to be half in for an hour, and it would feel better to her. And I think too, it's like, communication is the pillar that we just have to lean on as a couple who, we're all under the same roof. Nap time is happening right now as we're on this show. I can hear it unfolding behind the doors. And it's one of those things where it's like Drew and I have to act as a team. And I'm so grateful to have a teammate. For all of the people that are solo parenting out there, I bow down to you. But it's like, we're batting for the same team. We're working for the same goal. We've got to do it together. And I think communication is just so key, where if your work is requiring you to be more present, that's just, a season or a time or a week or a day. And then, then setting aside that time to also find that as a parent as well. And I think for women, we've got to trust in our ability to discern where we are most needed. And then we've just got to plant ourselves there and do the work.
I totally agree. And I think too, the more we try and not even try, I think it happens without trying. It's human nature. Compare ourselves to how other people are doing it. The more toxic, and that becomes a cancer in your business and your mind and your heart and your family, because if you compare your timeline or your process, I mean, to your point, there are people out there literally doing it alone. Like, I don't know how I would have done it had I not had Michael. I know I would have figured it out, but it wouldn't look the same way. And allowing yourself to focus both on the destination, where am I trying to go? Not just where am I trying to go, where am I called to go? Because that's like the most important piece. Sometimes we get caught up in looking at what someone else did and we're like, oh, I want to build that because they got all these things. But ultimately, it's not going to fill our cup. But also saying, okay, what does that journey look like to get there? Maybe for you, after you establish your true north and you have your values and you know your priorities locked and loaded and your family knows them and they are holding you accountable and you're holding them accountable, then it's easier for you to say, okay, this isn't going to happen in the 1 year timeline I thought. I'm going to give myself permission to extend this timeline, even though she did it in 6 months. She's not working. She's not living the same life I'm living. She doesn't have the same situations I have. So it's not letting yourself off the hook and dragging something on that doesn't need to be dragged on just so you don't have to work hard. But I know the people that listen to your show are ambitious, so they'll get what I'm saying. Yep. It's giving yourself that space and grace to allow the appropriate timeline and to actually craft the journey in a way that honors your values. I see it all the time. It was literally why God placed this whole concept on my heart, was because I saw so many people out there, successful entrepreneurs by many metrics, people making far more money than me, 8, 9 figures, like huge, that by those metrics, they were, quote, successful, and they were preaching about the values that they have, but they weren't honoring them or living them. And it just, it's heartbreaking to watch, because guess who's the collateral damage of that? Aside from you and the fact that you'll get to the end of your life and feel like, man, that wasn't it. I missed the mark. Your kids, your children, the ones that, you went into this saying, this is why you're doing it. They end up being that collateral damage for your inability to, look at what actually matters to you, and then make sure your day-to-day, the granular stuff that actually matters, is honoring what you want to prioritize, not just paying lip service to it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I often think about is, I remember before I had Coco, I took one final girls trip with a couple of entrepreneurs, and they're super ambitious, like so driven. And we literally were like, okay, next time we see each other, we're going to have this, this, this. Like, they were listing out like their goals and things. And I remember saying, next time we see each other, I'm going to have had a baby and be a mom. And and that was it. I was like, and nothing else. Like, I'm not reporting back on numbers, nothing else. And I was fortunate enough to be able to give myself that space and bandwidth to let that be the goal. But I also, in recent conversations, it's like, Coco is going to be 3 and like time has flown by so fast. And this window of time where we get to pour into these babies and nurture them and teach them and, be there as they learn about themselves and the world and their emotions and how to navigate what is to come is so small. And I was just talking to the same friend who was on that girls trip as I'm preparing for number 2, having total deja vu. And I said, I am giving myself the gift of trusting that I can kind of pump the brakes, that I can coast a little bit, that I can stop and kind of turn the volume of my ambition down just enough to listen to my intuition that tells me that this window of time is so fleeting, and to trust in my ability that when I am ready, when the kids are both in school, when life looks different than it will look today and a few months from now, that I'll be able to go full steam ahead if I want to, whatever that looks like. And I think so many women don't give themselves the gift to trust their intuition, to trust their abilities, to know that their success is not a fluke and that they can turn up the volume of it whenever they're ready to. And I think that's why so many people look back and they're like, I missed those days. Like those were the good days and I missed them. Do you feel like that is something you encounter or you hear from other women?
Yeah, absolutely. Myself included. It's this concept of, when we constantly have our foot on the gas, I feel like that sometimes keeps us in the good zone, like where we're kind of blind to what's actually possible for us. If we take our foot off the gas, find a moment to just look at the map and like get almost like an aerial view of our lives and have some perspective. Sometimes I know for me, sometimes I create I'm my own worst enemy with this stuff because
right.
I'm complaining to my husband. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. He's like, Liz, you literally set every single deadline in your project management system and like gave that to your team. This is self-inflicted. Like you didn't have to. I'm like, oh, why do I do that? But there was a part of me, it happened big time after we had our third baby. She's 2.5 now. And we had moved away from family. We were living out here in Wisconsin. So it was just it was just like a new world for me being, I'm such a mama's girl and like tight with my family. So raising this third little baby, we've got 3 little kids, and it was just mass chaos. And there was this calm moment where I'm nursing the baby and I just heard, it's okay, you can slow down. And it went against my DNA, Jenna, because there is no slowing down in my like genetic makeup. I always just want to go. I feel fulfilled when I'm going. I feel purposeful when I'm going. So it was really kind of stretching me to do that. Thankfully, like you, we had built in systems and a team I trust that allowed for that space. So I would encourage anyone that's in this stage where they are, whatever, time for money or a solo show or whatever they might be, start to create that vision for what you want your team to look like, even if you don't have it yet, what you want the systems to become, even though you don't have them yet, because that will ensure that as you build and grow, you're starting to evolve into having those things so that you can have more space. But guess what? Even if you don't have the exact team that you need or the evergreen funnels or any of the tactical stuff, sometimes it's still the right thing to slow down, take a little space and be present with in this very fleeting moment with our kids, because I come back to the same question over and over. This is kind of one of the ones that grounds me of, okay, what will I regret more? It's so simple, but I'll have an awesome opportunity. This came up very recently where I had a really amazing opportunity to partner with a company, and it was going to require me to be flying out multiple times a year for big chunks of time. And it was really easy for me to say no, because even though that opportunity gave me the illusion of being something great because it was shiny, it was really just good. It would keep me in good, but great is going to come when I slow down, see where I'm really called to go, and then let go of some of the things that are good to open up space for great. And it might be uncomfortable for those of us that are ambitious, but it's actually what's going to allow us to tap into that next level of leadership and potential.
I think that's such an amazing example, and I relate on so many levels. And it really reminds me of like, I remember when we left the hospital with Coco and we were like, I can't believe they're letting us like leave with a human and like we're responsible. And like they didn't make us like get a certification or things like that, where when we start our businesses, we lean so heavily on these gut feelings, this intuition. Same thing with parenthood. And I think that what's so incredible, because I think, myself, I was so afraid of becoming a mom. What would it mean for my career? What would happen to my business? Was I sabotaging myself and my success? And when I realized that like motherhood is helping me to be a better leader and my leadership is helping me to be a better mother, and that these two don't have to live these separate identities, they can coexist. And I lean on them to be better at both. It's such an amazing call for women who do have that desire to become a mom, but who also question, what does it mean if I'm ambitious? What does it look like being lived out as a CEO and a mom? What would you say for someone that's fearful of introducing a child into the mix and wondering what that will look like and how it will impact their future?
Yeah, I had those when you were sharing that. I had so many of those same thoughts before we had our son, our oldest. And I think we fear change, but the reality is if entrepreneurship is really in your DNA, like you embrace change. That is what entrepreneurship is. It's if you're doing it right, it's a constant evolution. And it kind of goes back to that whole compartmentalizing piece of like, oh, I just want to get my business to X, or I just want to achieve this, or I want to make this much money and then I'll have a baby. Like it's two separate things or two separate worlds, when in reality, things can be not only happening in conjunction with each other, but in harmony, where just to your point, like your evolution in motherhood has changed your growth in business and leadership and vice versa. So it can be such a blessing. And just little disclaimer, it will change your entrepreneurial path 100%, but it will change it for how it's supposed to be changed, because you're stepping into where you're being called to go. So you're opening the door to your next growth moment or your next level. I had that feeling with Michael after Michael and I got married. He was like, all right, let's have kids. And I was like, whoa, I need a minute. Like I'm trying to get this business off the ground. It was like 7 years ago. I was still kind of just starting to get out of that trading time for money, but still not, where I wanted to be. And I'm so grateful that we didn't let my fears of that change or that limited perspective of like, oh, if I do this, it's going to tank this or change this in a bad way, and just had some faith and went forward, because I have my son and I have our 2 daughters. And it my greatest blessings in life, if the businesses went away and the farm property went away and the travel and the opportunities and all of it went away, I would have everything I needed, because I said yes to opening my heart to where I was being called in motherhood. And we all walk a different path with that. And, unfortunately, none of us have control over how that plays out, right? We have to trust that it's going to play out the way it's supposed to. And I always pray for the women that want that and can't step into that. I know you walked through that and I've walked through that, and it can be heart-wrenching. But for those that are potentially pushing the brakes on motherhood because they're afraid it might change things, I'm reminding them it's supposed to change. You are supposed to change. Like this is an evolution. Do not, tell yourself that lie that so many women tell themselves, that their lives are ending or changing for worse when they have kids. It's changing, and you will change in the best ways, and your capacity will expand. The same way after I had our son and then I was pregnant with our daughter, I remember saying to Michael, are you sure I'm going to love this next one as much as the first one? Because I feel like I've got nothing left to give. Like I couldn't love this child anymore. And then she's born and somehow my capacity just doubled. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's all a miracle. It's all amazing. And it's just how we're designed as women and as moms. But I would just say, don't slow yourself down. Embrace that change. It's a constant thing in entrepreneurship. It's how it should be. And take on those new challenges with a spirit of hope and possibility. That's the beauty of paving your own way.
Yeah. Oh, I want to know, Elizabeth, you are the perfect person to ask, but what kind of support exists for women that are both moms and CEOs and maybe feeling the tension of living in both of those titles?
That's a good question. I feel like it exists in different forms in different places. So I've been a part of the years of different mom groups, and whether it be online or even in person. And there was a piece of it that wasn't clicking because a lot of those moms were either stay-at-home moms and didn't have a business of their own, or they were going off to a 9-to-5 job. And I just feel like it's just different. Entrepreneurship is different. And when we choose that path for ourselves, we're also choosing it for our children. And we have to be hyper aware of that they are going to need different levels of support and guidance and opportunities than kids that are in a different type of family. Again, none is better than the other, but it's nice to have people that can relate to that journey. So I was really struggling with finding that. And then when I found them, many of those groups were like these boss mom kind of groups where it was like hustle, grind, get your kid a tablet. They're the best babysitter out there. They're real cheap. I'm like, this is just not lining up with my values. I'm not knocking it if it's the right thing for the right person. Like I said, when you come up with your core values, you'll know, but something was missing. So to be totally honest, the best luck I've had is connecting with my peers, like people like you that I've just developed relationships with over the years, and then just created our own little inner circles of being able to commiserate sometimes, share the wins, share the losses, share the journey, take off the veil, and really be honest and vulnerable with each other. So it's kind of been self-pieced together, but truthfully, and shameless plug or not, like that's kind of why we created this concept of raising luminaries under the Luminary Leadership Company, was because I felt like it was missing. It was like, man, I really want to have these conversations with these incredible people, but I'm out there trying to source them one by one. Instead, let's put something out there that resonates with all of us and we can all come together behind it. So, for me, it was kind of creating something of my own, both on a small scale with friends and peers, which I strongly recommend. Like, go find your people that are in similar boats and literally just say, hey, I'm looking for other moms. This isn't a paid thing. This isn't a gimmick. I resonate with you. I think we align in our values at least enough that we can support each other along the way, and then find other resources. And if you know of any, Jenna, like send them my way, because I'm always looking for something like that too.
It's so funny. I had just like this lifeline of two girlfriends. They were both actually in my mastermind, both pregnant. And we started a text thread called the Mom Club. And literally we just try to voice note every other day, just checking in. And now we're both, or all three of us, are at different stages with baby number 2. One already had, one is on the way, and then mine. And so it's crazy to be on this experience with people who understand entrepreneurship, but also who desire to be present moms, and just even having that text thread where I haven't even seen them since we birthed babies 3 years ago, but having that lifeline to ask those questions or to commiserate or to share the struggles or to celebrate the triumphs is incredible. And I think anywhere that you can find just someone that gets it, that allows you to be honest and vulnerable, is such a blessing, because I think so much of motherhood is romanticized as well as entrepreneurship. And some days you just need people that are in your corner that say, I've been there, or I am there, or I've made it through that piece. And I think that's beautiful. I love and honor the work that you do. And I think that, as we all try to navigate the different seasons of life, I think the one thing that parenthood has really taught me is that everything is temporary and change is inevitable, and it's all so fleeting. And that a lot of times we're living in the days that we're going to think back to and wish we had been more present for. And so it's just this invitation to not miss the moments and to not miss the journey, like you said, because the destination lasts for 1% of it, if that. But the journey is so much more. So thank you so much, Elizabeth. Where can everybody find you and connect with you, learn more about what you do, and be a part of your community?
Oh, thanks, Jenna. Well, first of all, I have to say, I I totally agree with that. And the two phrases that I've always said should be like tattooed backwards on my forehead so I can see them in the mirror every morning and remind me when I'm in those stages where I'm like getting no sleep and I'm breastfeeding around the clock and I have toddlers screaming, or this too shall pass, and the days are long, but the years are short. That's just like so cliche, but so true and representative of what we all face as moms, of just this being in the trenches, but also seeing the beauty in all of it. So people can come hang out with us on our new podcast. It's the Luminary Leadership Podcast. And that's where we have episodes geared towards entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs looking to elevate into leadership and really step into getting out of just building a business and into creating a legacy. You know, there's something about this process of becoming a mom as you're an entrepreneur is there's this weird moment where you're like, man, this isn't about me anymore. You know, this is about the impact I'm having on that next generation and really embodying that. And that's why, too, we have one episode a week geared towards raising luminaries. So it's a short episode where we bring resources, stories, tips, guidance in raising up that next generation of leaders, your little luminaries of your own. But the best place to come find me is luminaryleadershipco.com/true north, because I put together this awesome workbook for your amazing listeners that I think will really revolutionize how they go forward, both in entrepreneurship and motherhood. And I would challenge everyone listening to go do it. It will take a little bit of time, but it's something you can actually involve, you know, your spouse if you're a duo, or you can do it on your own with your kids. And it's going to impact both worlds of business and raising children, because when you come up with this True North exercise, I didn't want to just, what I did different for your audience, Jenna, was we had this exercise that we had created that has been working beautifully for the people that we mentor, where we come up with these values, we really define them, we give them spirit from our own personal experiences, and we breathe life into these values. But that wasn't enough. I want people to actually embody them and live them. Sometimes we, put them on a painting and stick them on our wall, but we look at them and they make us feel guilty because we're like, crap, we're not doing that one. Oh, I missed the boat on that one. And it's just a reminder of the ways we're not doing it. So at luminaryleadershipco.com/true north, they can download this full workbook that's not only going to help them walk through this exercise to develop their own true north as a family, but also how can they involve the kids in the process? And then what are some strategies and exercises they can do ongoing to keep those values alive, to hold each other accountable to those values, to really weave it into the fabric of who these little leaders are becoming, starting with us. We're embodying it, and it's holding us accountable to that process so that we're not just, our kids don't hear what we say, they hear what we do. So how can we do it? How can we live it? And this exercise is perfect for that. And I'm also over on Instagram at Elizabeth Hartke, but I just so deeply love the work you're doing. And Jenna, you're such a beautiful example of that evolution as you've stepped into motherhood, of really honoring those priorities and being such a shining example and embodiment of what that is. I don't think you're paying lip service to it. I think you're living it. And I think that we need more of that, because it really is rare.
Thank you so much. This was such a beautiful and necessary conversation. And I just know, especially as we navigate, this new world we're living in and ask ourselves those really deeper questions that are having so many women question, where am I going? And is this what I want? And am I on the right path? I think that conversations like this open the door to ask those questions and to get quiet enough with ourselves to hear the answers. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm not going to lie, being a CEO and a mom is not easy, but it is absolutely worth it, which is why I'm doing it again. But I love conversations like this one with Elizabeth, because I think that women are really at a crossroads. We're really analyzing, what am I working towards? And what do I envision for my future? And is this in alignment with those visions? And I love that the conversation is shifting from having to keep everything perfectly balanced to figuring out presence and values and what is your true north and how to weigh out opportunities and ideas against them. And I know for me, as we prepare for baby number 2, I'm faced with the same questions I felt just years ago. Even though I had this experience to lean back on, I don't know what this next season will look like. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to explore it. And I'm ready for my capacity to expand like Elizabeth spoke about. But it's really beautiful to connect with other women who are mothering and growing a business and unapologetic about it. So regardless of where you are in your journey, I just want to encourage you to get quiet with yourself, to ask yourself, what is it that you want, to lean into those desires, whether it's going full steam ahead or hitting pause for a little bit or trying to start your family. I know for us, our journey was not at all what we expected, but looking back in hindsight, it was exactly what we needed. And I say that with so much empathy for those on the journey where it's not looking like you thought it would. I can see the work that I did in our season of waiting, and I can honor that work. And man, if I could go back and hug that version of myself, I would. But what I did while I was waiting is what led me to be the type of mom that I dreamt of being in the first place. And so wherever you are in that journey, I hope that today's conversation blesses you. I hope that you feel encouraged and less alone. And of course, until next time, goal diggers, keep on digging your biggest goals. I'm over here giving you a virtual high five because you just finished another episode of the Goal Digger podcast. Did that go by way too fast for anyone else? If you want more, head over to goaldiggerpodcast.com for show notes and all the discount codes from today's sponsors. And if you're looking for a new crew of movers and shakers like you to bounce ideas and ask questions, be sure to join my exclusive community for goal diggers on Facebook. The link's waiting for you at goaldiggerpodcast.com.